on, Naka? We're just waiting for Jack to come in. I think he's in a completely different time zone, so we're just waiting for him to pop on up. So thanks for coming through, brother. What's going on?
Yeah, just checking the charts. You know, I see the chart. I see numbers gone down a little bit, but not very much. I don't think we can conclude too much from this. Microsoft is shitting the bed, which is kind of what the bears wanted to see, right? Like, but we've got a whole 3 more days of corporate earnings to go. If that goes badly, then good luck. Good luck if you are net long if earnings week goes badly and Jay Powell brings the hammer down. But let's see. It's the game is still afoot.
Yeah, I'm personally flat. Even with my V2 bag from Luna, I I also got some of this discretionary bag. I'm sure you've heard me talk about it. Kanto. It's another Cosmos based chain, and like the thing has just been up only. And like I had got into it a few days ago, and like it's popped off like 50+%, and it's really one of those bags that like they're so low cap, even though like on CoinGecko it said that like, oh, it's 70 million in market cap, right? But it's kind of a psyop because the liquidity is so thin for some of these tokens that in actuality it kind of moves like a $10 million market cap token, right? So it's one of those things that you really want to be sensitive with. Um, but bridging there is like the worst thing ever, and um, you can only get it on some pretty shady exchanges like MEXC and BitGet, and like the thing can just deplete to nothing really. It's one of those, either it either does well or it goes to zero. There's a lot of
Yeah,
those.
I mean, the name of it sounds a bit like camel toe.
Yeah,
Which I'm honestly a big fan of camel toe. I mean, if any chicks with a bit of a camel toe situation want to hit me up, I'm so into that shit. But I mean, if it pumps, right?
yeah, man. So I personally think that the market's going to take a breather here as far as crypto is concerned, because once they start seeing the degen bags pump, you can't really like you know state here on Twitter because it could go either way, right? Once you start seeing those pump, and then you start seeing more of like the broader on-chain stuff pump, that's usually how it goes, right? It's the majors, and then the mid caps, the small caps, and then like the most degen things ever just start pulling off crazy numbers. And you know when I stop seeing like spot volume go into majors, I'm like, all right, we're getting way too ahead of ourselves here, right? But it's a good pump nonetheless, right? So as far as earnings go, like I'm kind of new to all that, man. Like I'm not necessarily in the equity markets, so we'll see, man. I remember in July something regarding earnings, like some companies as far as the equity markets kind of missed. So during that time period, like late July, most alts had already topped. Like a lot of it was just already over exhausted, and we just went into distribution after that. And I think we're near that area, but hey, man, the market likes a surprise, right? So I still haven't gotten back from Jack, so I'm not sure what's going on there. What are your thoughts, Naka? Do you think this move is kind of exhausted? Mark, are you there?
Oh, hey, sorry. I was busy there for a second. Could you repeat that?
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, do you think this move is exhausted, given
Um, I mean, I'm hearing a lot of people asking whether it's exhausted, and in a way, that's a sort of implication that it isn't. That it fucking pumps one more time. Like a lot of the smart people are saying, it's we get a third thrust up, we get fresh highs. Maybe we see 24K on Bitcoin. Everyone starts screaming the bottom's in, and then we get more weak earnings. We get Jay Powell slapping it down a bit and saying, no, you're not allowed to be degens, and that basically, sends us down. But I mean, I'm increasingly thinking that we don't see fresh lows. I mean, we may, but the argument that we don't is actually that international equities are actually doing great now, right? Um, and the fact that international is picking up um, is actually, that's probably just going to put a limit on the downside that US and European stuff can actually do. Um, we might not make fresh lows on the S&P even if we don't break out, right? Um, it's increasingly looking like this is going to be a bit more crabby um, on legacy. And if it's crabby on legacy, it's almost certainly not going to make new lows on crypto. So I think what we would need for fresh lows, like like 14K, 13K, 12K, that kind of thing, is we need the legacy equity situation to be worse than people think it is right now, right? So, before people thought it was worse, but it actually wasn't for various reasons. Um, and now people think it's better. So if they're wrong about that, and it is actually bad, um, I think we can see fresh lows. But I mean, I think that the crab is probably going to be king for a bit, like maybe for even a whole year. And I know a lot of people have already said that, but it's looking like that's the way it's going to be, at least to me.
what are your thoughts on more on the DeFi side? Like, CRV has some things going on with their CRV USD, and also Aave V3 is pretty close to launching on ETH mainnet. When you have that happen, you have the you have the GHO stablecoin releasing, and that should be pretty cool. And I also see we have DeFi Daniel. I see him in our spaces quite a bit. So DeFi Daniel, if you want to come up and talk shop, feel free to do so, brother. I'm gonna send you an invite to speak. It's pretty cool to talk shop with some regular faces we see in the crowd, and we always love having some new voices up on stage. So, DeFi Daniel, I just sent you an invite to speak if you want to come up and talk shop. So, Naka, what are your thoughts on things like that? I know the Curve ecosystem. I'm not necessarily too familiar with it, but I understand that it's one of the more important protocols on ETH mainnet, right? And you also have like liquid staking derivatives like Lido that
Yeah.
contribute to all that stuff. So, have you been looking into any of those developments? I know from our conversation last night, you had described yourself as an ETH maxi, right? And that's a term that it's not really thrown around as much as BTC maxi, right? Where it seems like my class in crypto, right? The class that came into the digital asset space in 2017, more specifically, like late 2017, a lot of those people started off as quote unquote altcoiners, and that's a cringe name, by the way. It's so cringe. But they predominantly got into the more like exotic innovation growth names, right? During that time, like Neo, et cetera, et cetera. And they ended up getting burned and then just said, you know what, I'm going to stick to Bitcoin and Bitcoin only, right? And then a lot of the maxis you see today on Twitter Spaces, they all came from that class, but they didn't really stick around to see the Ethereum project go live with a lot of the things that were spoken upon in 2014, 2015, right? And And back then in 2017, 2018, the projects that stuck out on Ethereum, as I'm sure you know, Naka, were things like Golem, right? Augur, um, Zero X Protocol, right? And look at how long it took Zero X Protocol to come out with their decks, right? Matcha. They came out as an ICO in 2017, did a 10x off the bat, but we didn't really see product from them until years down the road. And from all of those initial ETH projects, right, like Stratus, is another one. Um,
I don't even know what the fuck Stratus does.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
fucking dead. I seem to
yeah.
remember that Stratus is dead, but do you know what it does?
I honestly have no idea, because if you go back to the white paper, right, or really any white paper from that initial Ethereum ecosystem, they've all rebranded, right? So I'm not sure what's going on with them. Like, the last I heard about Gollum was, John McAfee made some tweet saying Gollum was gonna 1000x and go to like $30, and I just never kept up with it again, right? But back then, Ethereum was branded as like the worldwide virtual machine, like the worldwide internet computer, right? Cloud computing and all that stuff. And I believe with Gollum, it was like you were able to share your data space within Ethereum, if that made sense. And it was supposed to have like this implementation once like staking goes live. And like the big talk around that time was the Casper upgrade, right? And Casper didn't launch until like 2021, right? And as far as ethel 2 goes, like optimism, like the optimism rollups and all that stuff, that was a huge conversation back then as well. So it's like we're only now beginning to see what was spoken about as far as the Ethereum project goes. Now we're seeing it come to fruition, right? We have the dexes, we have like the initial beginnings of DeFi, and now you bring in the rollups, right, for scalability and all that stuff. And after the rollups, that's when you have more of the privacy solutions, right? All the ZK stuff. And I'm excited for what Aztec is going to bring, because I think like if there's going to be another wave of DeFi, as impactful as DeFi Summer was, where it inspires a lot of innovation and a lot of like devs start experimenting on it, I think it's going to be Aztec to lead that wave. So we'll see how that looks like.
Yeah, Aztec does look pretty bullish to me. I mean, I've already been a user for a while, but it really looks like they've kind of sexed up their website a bit. Their offering looks interesting. And yeah, I mean, privacy is going to be important. I think the one thing I will say is it looks like Stratus isn't anything to do with Ethereum. Um, it's its own L1, and it seems like it's dead. Um, it was some kind of enterprise L1 scam, but like I think all these fucking L1s are a bad idea, and like I'm absolutely dying to tell you that I think I have a solution for this, but I'm not I'm not ready to quite spill that yet. But I'm just very bearish on alt L1s. I think they're a bad idea.
Yeah, that's fine, man. That's
I
fine.
mean, like you can make money on them because they pump and dump, right? Like some VCs, get some fucking, some guy with like hair down to his waist and trousers up to his neck, and make a new chain called Crap Toss, and they fucking pump it with market makers, and they FOMO everyone in at the top. Normies buy the top, VCs exit scam them, and then that's all she wrote. Good night. And that's just going to keep happening over and over and over again. And I think I maybe have a solution to it.
What do you think the solution is? Because the idea is probably out there already.
I
What
can't say yet. I can't say
what's
yet.
what's attractive? To be honest, is
Hey,
hold
hey.
on. Yeah, what's attractive about these ecosystems is, I would say, first and foremost, it would have to be UI, because you can have the tech, right? You can have all of these solutions, um, as far as like digital asset space is concerned. But if there's no if there's no attention on the end user, right, and you don't have a clean UI, then it's not going to go anywhere. And
Yeah,
that's
right.
something.
You need a good user experience. And I tried using MetaMask on my mobile this morning, and it actually sucked. I don't really use MetaMask on mobile because I'm a desktop guy, but I just thought I'd give it a go because most ordinary people's interface with computing is mostly mobile nowadays. In fact, even mine is mostly mobile, right? Like I mostly use Twitter, I use Facebook, I use Instagram. It's all on mobile, right? Because the mobile's always with you. It means it's more addictive. Um, it means it's more convenient. You don't have to like bother to go and sit down next to a computer and turn it on and like fucking do all the shit that it needs to do, and then like just like to like a post or something, right? So most people interact with computing via mobile. So really to be successful, crypto needs to go mobile first. It needs to be like max mobile ease of use. And I think you mentioned that the Lunar ecosystem had um, a good mobile experience as well as good ponzinomics to kind of give people some ponzification to get them into it, which then feeds this sort of lunar sort of growth dynamo, right? Like where you have like some ponzinomics that draws in some users. The users buy some tokens that helps the ponzinomics. Then because they see good returns, they draw in some more users and so on and so forth. And crypto often has these kind of growth engines like that. The problem is, if you just build a good growth engine, a good flywheel like that, um, and the tokenomics is fundamentally broken, then you just get a bunch of people wrecked like on Luna. Um, and on top of that, there's the security problem of alt L1s. They're all worse security than Ethereum because Ethereum's the biggest, and when you're proof of stake, your security is proportional to your market cap. So like drawing people out into a bunch of different alt L1s is actually really bad for crypto because it fragments the economic security and fragments the composability of crypto, which is the real benefit, right? I mean, if you just build some kind of fucking VC scam ecosystem like fucking Craptos, where the VCs built it, the VCs are pumping it, the VCs are sponsoring all the DApps. It's basically like a private company, right, with like some blockchain LARP, right? Like, what's the fucking difference? I could just start a company called Craptos. I could make a mobile app that would let people gamble a bit. And why do you even need a fucking blockchain, right? So the point of blockchain is it's to be permissionless, not just for the users but also for the devs, right? So that anyone can build a DApp and also compose it with other people's DApps, right? That's the key, composability. So if I have a DApp on Solana and someone else has one on Craptos, they can't interface with each other because it's different blockchains, it's a different consensus, right? Well, yeah, you can do bridging, but then bridging like brings in a whole set of risks and technical difficulties. Bridging is stupid. It should all just be on Ethereum, right? But I think like people haven't really some people have like kind of grokked this insight, right? So I think the Cosmos people basically get this, which is why I'm sort of bullish on Cosmos because it's clear they understand it. But the stuff like fucking Sui, Say, Craptos, all this shit, like it's all P&Ds, right? It's all VC pump and dumps. Retail is their exit liquidity. They're not going to be around in 3 years. It's one.
I would be very careful with talking in absolutes. I think, but we know that the market decides where the user is going to go. And at the current moment, like I said recently, when you have this much activity during a down period, right? Because I mean, even though some price action has been pretty like all right across some altcoins, let's not forget the Tether printer is not on. The USDC printer is not on, right? It's been predominantly BUSD, right? And it's predominantly stable coins on the sidelines that have been pushed towards exchanges to buy up these altcoins that had pretty thin books, right? But the main thing to look at is as far as like these newer chains, if any development is going on, and also the community. And with Aptos, it's sort of like, you have people that are like, oh, why is it being built? Why is it being built? But it's sort of like, these newer L1s, right? Like when Thorchain came out, right? Like, dude, I was there when it launched on the initial Binance decks. Like, it was looked at as something that would just go to zero and it would just never work out, right? It wasn't until like late 2020, when things like UST started pumping out, and like the whole idea of like bringing in a decentralized stablecoin to Thorchain, right? And of course, the market was just in straight up only, and people were like, all right, what's this Thorchain thing, right? If the overall market goes up, then essentially the Rune token is like a bet on the entire ecosystem. It's sort of like, you said this as well, but it's sort of like a 5x or even 10x long on the entire market cap as far as liquidity goes, injected, right? And you just have to wait for these new narratives to pop up, right? Could go up, could go down. We'll let the market decide. And I even remember Solana, right? Like it was one of the few products that was actually talked about in 2018, right? Because all these products that failed, right, as far as capturing users in crypto, right, like Neo, Wanchain, Aeon, Icon, all those things, even Lisk, right, um, they were all branded as O1s. But with Aptos, they're built on something called Move, and there's really nothing like wild out there outside of their NFTs, and that's usually how it starts. And for right now, at least what I do, I like to check how wild the community is and how active the devs are. As far as reaching out to community, talking to new products developing within the ecosystem. Did you see some of these Aptos spaces? And there's 300, 400, 500 people in them, and their main audience seems to be like not really America or the UK. It tends to be like people in like Latin America, South Africa, Australia, and it's absolutely wild, dude. So I think I think what we know of these newer projects now, it's best to kind of like take a non-biased approach and kind of see where things are a year from now, because it seems that with every boom and bust cycle that the digital asset space has, there's always like at least two new consensus protocols that end up making it, right, with the first
Well,
boom and bust.
which
So
ones made it from last cycle?
so I'll kind of go over a brief rundown, right? After the 2013 boom and bust, you had like the alternative payment solutions, right? You had like privacy kickoff, right? XMR, and you also had things like Dash, LTC, XRP, which really didn't really like kick off into high gear until that next bear market, right? The 2014, 2015 one, where they really started making traction. So those are like those are essentially new consensuses, right? Like Dash has higher speed and all that stuff. Monero has privacy. Um, so with that being said, then you have
Yeah, I mean,
then
Dash was like a classic developer pump and dump, right?
yeah. There's a lot of that. But anyways, then after that bear market, you had the 2017 boom and bust, and that's when you had like smart contracts kick off, right? And then of course you had Cardano survive. I know they're built on something called Pascal, right? So not only did you have a smart contract survive, but you had, I know ETH is like solidity, right? Excuse me. And then You had Ada with
Well, I mean,
Pascal.
ETH isn't just Solidity. ETH is also Viper. So if you're a
Yeah,
Python dev, you can code basically in Python.
yeah. And then you also had like a new consensus, right? And that's with Ada. Even though there was nothing built on Ada, you still had something survive, right? And then that inspired like new stuff, right? Especially developments on Ethereum, right? You had things like Matic, Link, like the initial birthing of DeFi, right? You had ETHLend from back then, and then they rebranded to Aave, and then you had things like Synthetics Network. And let me tell you something about Synthetics Network, dude. That thing did not do anything, nothing at all until 2019. And then of course, when they started doing their thing, that's when everyone thought, wow, let's explore this even more. And then you had um, other things like Solana trying to do pretty much everything under the sun, and Avex with their subnets. So that survival of Ethereum, in my opinion, I think that like inspired a lot of innovation, and I think it's going to take some time. And I don't think it should just be like this cruel like maximalism dystopian. Let projects fail, let projects do boom and bust. It's survival of the fittest. And me personally, I'm taking an unbiased approach. But I am still optimistic about Aptos. However, I will say that like I did take a trade on that, and I have fully exited that position as of as of last Friday afternoon. So I'll be looking to re-enter that potentially at
Yeah, I
lower
mean, dude,
prices.
short term, these PNDs are great for trading, right? But like, crypto is not supposed to be for trading, right? Crypto's supposed to be for using. And the thing is, like, here we are 15 years after the inception of crypto, and it's like, oh, this Aptos thing, it's like good price action, like it's not supposed to be, that's not supposed to be how we assess these things. But the thing is, like, people like number go up, right? Um, it's kind of like in the early days of the internet, what did they use the internet for? Porn and gambling, right? And a little bit of computer games, right? Nowadays, people use the internet to do their work, to do their day job, but they didn't in the early days. So, crypto's still a little bit immature if people are focusing on the price action of tokens, right? Um, it's really something I would love to basically completely put an end to. But, let's see.
We have someone here called Zero. What's going on, dude?
Hey guys, sorry, I was going to jump in when you guys were talking about Stratus because I hadn't heard that name in a long time. I was originally looking at that project in 2017, but yeah, basically they were just going to build a .NET solution on Microsoft Stack when I was getting into them, which is something I think no one asked for. Last time I checked in, they were building NFTs, but yeah, you guys had moved on from that. But I just wanted to jump in there with that particular point.
Yeah, I think also Neo ended up doing some like Binance Smart Chain stuff. I believe it's called Flamingo. Pretty wild, man. Pretty wild. But I expect a lot of that, a lot of rebranding, not only by name but also by product. Like I know Elrond recently rebranded to Multiverse, something like that. Yeah, Multiverse X, and I'm not sure why that is, but it seems like they're pivoting to more like Web3 metaverse kind of stuff. Um, but I'm just not familiar with their tech stack as far as that being implemented. But if anyone is here in the audience and they want to come up and speak, feel free to do so. Feel free to come up and just talk some shop. So, not gonna. When was the last time you even used DeFi?
When was the last time I used DeFi? Probably like, I think I did some small, like ETH USDC swaps to just kind of adjust my position a bit. But I mean, for taking trades, I've actually been taking trades on CeFi, because even though I prefer DeFi, the products that I'm interested in, like leverage tokens, are not currently available on DeFi, right? You don't have a wide array of DeFi leverage tokens on DeFi. There's like one or two of them, but only one or two types of leverage. In fact, only one type of leverage. Well, there's two. I think somebody has an Ethereum short leverage token. Somebody has a Bitcoin long leverage token, and there's an Ethereum long leverage token. But I mean, like for taking trades, CeFi is still way better, right? Like KuCoin, Gate, that kind of thing. If you're just taking a trade, you're going to be in, you're going to be out. You have a limited amount of money that you're risking. You're not using it like a fucking bank account, then that's great. I mean, I guess I'm also still using DeFi in the sense that I'm storing value in stable coins, just letting it sit there, right? Hell, I could even go and search with them for some yield, although honestly, I'm a little bit scared of yield at the moment. But yeah, I mean, probably like a couple of weeks.
And what was the first DeFi protocol that you used? How was your experience like?
It's pretty good, actually. I think I made a really bad trade. I tried to take an oil trade because I was talking to some people on Twitter about, hey, I should go short.
Oh gosh, you ran
Yeah.
into the oil people. Oh no, dude. With Twitter Spaces not good. With Twitter Spaces, bro, you gotta be careful, man. Even though these Twitter Spaces,
Well, no, it wasn't crypto Twitter. It was somebody outside of CT who said, look, I think oil's probably going to go down because of the pandemic or something like that. And I was like, oh, I want to put a trade on that, but I don't have a traditional brokerage account, so I guess I'll go to synthetics. So I went to synthetics to put that on. Realized I had to swap something into something else, and I think I used 1inch to do a swap. And it turned out that I lost money on my oil trade, but I gained like about 10x the value of the trade for my 1inch airdrop. That I had no idea. It was not on purpose. I didn't realize the airdrops were even a thing. I just happened to use 1inch to do a swap so that I could put my synthetics trade on. I think I had to swap like ETH into SUSD or something like that. So actually basically like 5x just on the airdrop. So I mean, obviously airdrops are nice, number go up is nice. In terms of individual retail investors putting on oil trades, I mean, that's not really much of a it's not really much for use case because basically you shouldn't be doing that. As an individual, you should basically have a fairly diversified portfolio. Okay, you might have some alpha about small caps because you know somebody, you're in some community, fair enough. You're early to something. But real sustainable use cases are not about being early. They're not about taking wild, risky trades where you have no alpha. Real sustainable use cases, stuff that people already want to do, and that they maybe already do with centralized banks and stuff. But you do it with crypto instead, right? So that's what we need in terms of use cases. And right now, in terms of DeFi use cases for that kind of finance, it doesn't really work yet, right? I mean, like, the thing is, finance is quite a complicated machine, right? Like, if you think about how many different steps you need to make a financial system that works, it's quite a lot, right? Like when you take out a mortgage, you might think that's quite simple, but it's not really, because the bank doesn't want to hold your debt. They have to sell that as a mortgage-backed security that has to trade on a market. That market has to have regulations to make sure there isn't insider trading or cheating of some kind. Then you need derivatives on top of that market to make it efficient. You can't just have spot. You need people to be able to short options, et cetera, et cetera. So just a simple thing like a mortgage is actually quite complicated, right? When you just look at the whole sort of life cycle of that mortgage and what it does. And then, I mean, a lot of people in crypto don't actually understand what legacy finance even does, right? Like, legacy finance is actually about something called financial intermediation, which means it brings together the interests of savers and borrowers, right? So savers like your grandparents or something who are saving for retirement, and borrowers who are like, you want to borrow to buy a house, you want to borrow to start a company. And then there needs to be these other agents who are sort of, basically arbitrageurs or traders or people who want to basically add alpha. So, I mean, an ordinary saver doesn't want to have to worry about alpha, right? They just want a fucking vault to put their money in, and they just want yield, right? They don't want to have to think about it. So you need to connect the saver with somebody with some alpha to know what to invest in, somebody to manage the risk, and a bunch of instruments to allow that. And then that has to be connected with somebody who's going to borrow and going to do something productive with it. So it's pretty complicated, right? ETH DeFi is not quite there, but I think the key to this is composability, right? The key is that you have a bunch of apps on Ethereum, you have a bunch of dApps there, and any dApp can use any other dApp, right? And that that level of composability is what's going to make DeFi actually succeed. But there are still a few parts that are missing. One part that's missing is identity, right? We don't really have crypto identity that's quite working yet. So when you do something on crypto, the dApps don't know whether you're a real person or whether you're a Sybil or a bot or anything like that. And that means that there are certain things that you can't do. And one of those is, under collateralized lending. And actually, without under collateralized lending, legacy finance wouldn't work at all, right? I mean, imagine if you said, I want to start a business and I need $1 million to start my business. And the bank said, okay, well, you can just deposit $1.1 million of collateral, and we'll, 1.5 million, and we'll let you borrow the 1 million against it. Well, it's like, well, that's not really very helpful to me. If I had $1.5 million, I wouldn't need to borrow $1 million, right? So, it's kind of it's kind of a big deal that we don't have under collateralized lending working. And I think if we did have that working, things would be a bit different. But it doesn't work yet because we don't have identity, because we don't know who people are. We can't stop people from just basically taking out the loan and then fucking off, right? Sorry, that was a bit of a rant, but it is what it is.
So would you say that something like Curve with their CRV USD would solve those things?
No.
Essentially, like that's gonna sort of solve the stablecoin trilemma, right? With
No.
peg scalability, decentralization, and a lot of the fees that occur with the next iteration of Curve. That's gonna add a lot of value to things like VCRV and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Curve is solving a different problem, though, right? Curve is not solving the under collateralized lending problem. Curve is basically this kind of liquidity on demand system, right? Where you basically pay for liquidity. So if you're launching a new stablecoin, right, you need a liquid market between your stablecoin and, all of the existing big stablecoins. And, you can basically pay bribes to Curve to get that liquidity, right? So Curve is a liquidity marketplace, it's just one of those boring technical back-end parts of finance, right? That liquidity has a value and people want to buy and sell it. And you do that on Curve, right? But it still doesn't solve under collateralized lending. You still can't, like, if you want to build a business, right? If you want to borrow money to open a fucking restaurant or something, you can't do that on Ethereum, right?
Not Naka, just to update you, there is going to be some sort of like a burn feature for the Curve token because the emissions are so high, you're essentially getting diluted to an extreme degree, you know. Um, so with basically Curve USD, right? They are going to implement like a burn feature, but it is a lot different than what Terra V1 tried to do, and like Curve is back to doing almost 1 billion in daily volume as far as the protocol is concerned, not so much the token. So may like I wouldn't put it past them to not like solve the whole under collateralized lending aspect of things, and especially within Ethereum. I think there's going to be a lot of developments that inspire other protocols to follow in their footsteps. Because to me, Ethereum is like the staple of the smart contract world, right? So what are your thoughts on that? Like, what do you think are the biggest hurdles really, for the entire digital asset space and trying to solve this issue?
Trying to solve which issue?
The under collateralized lending that you're speaking upon.
It's identity, right? You need to know who people are, right? But you also need to do that in a way that's compatible with the ethos of blockchain. So you need to know who somebody is, but without, in a sense, without knowing who they are. It sounds a bit weird, but probably the best solution that I've seen is actually WorldCoin, right? Where you can, that's the orb thing. You can go to this orb and they'll scan your eye, and then they'll give you a cryptographic token from that basically
Naka, that is scary. That is terrifying.
right. But here's the thing: it allows you to prove that you're a real human, right? Without proving which one, right? So, and you can't get this twice, right? You can only get it once because you only have one pair of eyes. So you go to the ball, it scans your eyeballs, it gives you a cryptographic token. It doesn't know who you are, right? But it does know if you were to try and go to it again, it would be able to cryptographically prove that you were already been given your token, so you can't have another one, right? So it doesn't know who you are. The people who you're interacting with on chain don't know who you are. But you get this one identity, and that means that suddenly you can basically have a crypto credit score, right? So you can go to a bank, a crypto bank like Aave, and say, I want to borrow money to start a bank, to start a restaurant, right? I need $1 million. Here's my WorldCoin ID, which it's not associated in any way with your real life existence. And you can say, look, I've already taken out some loans, I've already paid them back. I have a good credit score. Will you give me this under collateralized loan? I can add some collateral. Maybe, I can put up my favorite NFT as collateral, but I still don't have enough money to borrow the full million, to cover the full $1 million for my restaurant. And they'll be like, yeah, okay, we'll do that, right? Then you go and, you get your loan, and ideally, you go and build a restaurant business and you pay the loan back with interest. And if the system is working correctly, the interest shouldn't be too high, right? So maybe you pay, 10% annualized on it or something like that. And if you don't pay back, you can declare crypto bankruptcy, and you trash your credit score, and then people won't give you loans anymore. But I mean, allowing people to do that would allow crypto finance to compete with traditional finance, right? The problem is there's a lot of there's a lot of stuff you need to do to make this system work, to make it so that you can't abuse it, right? But it's a start, I think.
So it's sort of like on-chain KYC, right?
Well, it's sort of KYC without being KYC, because at the end of the day, the person looking at the chain can only see this ID that you got from WorldCoin, and that ID that you got from WorldCoin doesn't tell them anything about who you really are. You could be living in America, you could be living in Ethiopia, you could be living in fucking Antarctica. You could be black, white, yellow, male, female, young, old, anything. They don't know. All they see is a cryptographic token that you have, basically a kind of almost like a self NFT in a way, that proves that you're a real person, so you're not a bot. It proves that you're not like a serial scammer who's taken out 5,000 of these and just keeps taking out loans and defaulting on them. So it basically becomes a crypto ID that proves that you're a human, right?
And not necessarily like a lot of these bots that you see on chain, right?
Yeah. Right, because they won't be able to get them because they don't have a pair of eyes, so they can't go to the scanner. So it basically distinguishes between bots and humans. And I mean, I think it's probably one of the most interesting things in crypto right now. And I'm pretty excited about what can be done with this because you can also do things like you could do like a basic income, right? So you could basically everyone who gets their eyes scanned by this can get like a basic, 1 USDC per day income just for existing. Um, and then maybe that could be ramped up as crypto becomes more successful, and that would allow you to onboard more users, right?
Yeah, yeah. But as far as DeFi goes, dude, like, wouldn't you say that it wouldn't really attract many individuals to contribute stuff to things like TVL? Like some people, they just want to remain low key, right? Like if you go on Maker, right, you'll see that there's a whale that posted some collateral there since the top of the year. I mean, my bad, at the beginning of the year, and he's made well over $1 billion since that time on his collateral, right? And he's one of the biggest ETH whales as far as DeFi is concerned. So wouldn't you run into a problem if like people in the space start implementing WorldCoin? Because yeah, like the token itself, WorldCoin. I mean, it might have some speculation if it's starting to be implemented, but I kind of feel that it would deter people from using these platforms. Because it's like if I'm on Phantom, right? And I want to use like Andre Cronier's like latest DeFi whatever, right? And the yield is good. I'm enthusiastic and all that stuff, but all of a sudden they're asking me for a scan of my eyeballs. I wouldn't really be too much into that. And many individuals think that, oh, because just because you're in crypto, you probably have this like super high tech setup with 10 monitors and 5 MacBooks. But in reality, if we're being honest, most people just have their ledger, a Mac or a Chromebook, right? What have you, and that's it. And that's pretty much it. And they're not. I'm not sure how the process goes for that world thing, dude. So you'd have to run me through how that really works. You know
Well,
what
you
I'm
don't
saying?
you don't do it on your own machine. You have to actually go to one of these scanners. They go around various cities, and if you get your eyeball scanned, you get a WorldCoin airdrop, right? Um, so it's literally like an airdrop for getting scanned. Um, so I mean, if you're a crypto whale and you're you don't want to get an iris scan because you don't see much upside to it, that's fine. It's not designed for the whales, it's designed for the average person. Because the average person, if you're a whale with $1 billion, you're probably not going to need under collateralized lending anyway, because you've got $1 billion of collateral, right? You're probably not even really going to need lending. You just ultimately want to be able to do things like take long positions, play fucking whale games and all this shit. But that's not a sustainable future for crypto, right? A whale playground where retail repeatedly get rinsed on pump and dumps, that's not sustainable. that's going to be dead in a couple of years, or maybe a decade or something at most, before people just basically realize it's all a fucking scam. It's just a way for, large players to rinse retail. But, and you know how it works, right? I mean, you have the VCs who get in early, they pump the coins, retail buys the top because they get FOMO, et cetera, et cetera. That's not sustainable. You need people to be able to use crypto for stuff that they actually already wanted to do, right? So you already want to buy a restaurant. You already want to go to a bank and get a loan to build a new restaurant or a new house, or to buy a car or any of these things, right? So the idea is you'll be able to do that with DeFi, right? And the advantage of it being with DeFi is it means that your government can't basically fuck you in the ass. And there are a lot of governments who like to do that. And increasingly, even Western governments are starting to do that, right? They'll basically, with the Canadian truckers protest thing, a lot of these people who were protesting against the government had their banking taken away from them, right? They became unbanked. And that's a bit of an extreme example, but it's certainly a trend that's happening. Financial repression, actual aggressive KYC where they say, oh, we don't like what you said on social media. Like PayPal are doing this, right? PayPal have a thing where if you say something naughty on social media, they can fine you $2,500 if you say something they don't like. So, the idea is to replicate the functionality of traditional finance, but without the centralized government control, right? And that means you need identity. You can't do finance without some form of identity, because otherwise you just get people who will spam like 1 million fake accounts and then just take.
Not good. Wouldn't something like ENS be able to facilitate that and not necessarily scan my eyeball? You know what I'm saying? That's it's sort of like this dystopian version of UBI. Like ultimately I think UBI is coming within the decade. I think.
Why do you think it's dystopian?
I mean, scanning eyeballs, that's sort of like a DNA, the DNA kind of thing, you know what I mean? And like I don't know what's in those lasers that scan my eyeball. I don't know if I'm gonna go blind in the next 5 years because that laser had a ton of radiation. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't know if I'm putting my eyeball in a microwave. You know what I'm saying? Like it's sort of like
I don't think there's any radiation involved in it. I think it's just a camera.
I'm honestly not enthusiastic about things like that, right? It's sort of like, hey, let's take a sample of your blood, right? And we'll give you a token. You know what I'm saying? Like sort of like why are they you're telling me they're going around cities in vans wanting to scan people's eyeballs.
Yep. That is
Not
100% what they're doing, and I think it's great. I think that is the future, because you can't build you said at the beginning ENS, you could use an ENS address, but the problem is I can just register 1,000 ENS addresses, and then I have 1,000 Sybils, and then I can go and take out loans under all of those 1,000, and then just fuck off and keep the money, right? So it has to be something that's associated with.
But then that would limit like the decentralization aspect, right? Like digital identity, right? Like the whole, like, I don't want my wallets to be tracked. So like, say you're like, hey, I want you to prove that you have ownership of this wallet, right? Then I could just tell you, hey, this is my wallet, and I send you an ETH transaction worth like $2, right? You just send it back to me, right? That's all what it really comes down to, in my opinion. I don't think that like
The problem is, if I'm a scammer, I can just create 1 million wallets. I can put a little bit of ETH into all of them, and I can say, hey, here's 1 million people. Because you see, wallets can be spammed out. They're not Sybil resistant, right? ENS addresses, they can be spammed out. They're not Sybil resistant. WorldCoin is Sybil resistant because most people can't just get hold of 1 million people to go and get their eyes scanned. Yeah, maybe you could get you and your friend to do it, so you could create a little bit of sort of Sybil activity, but it would be really hard to like really spam that out heavily. So yeah, I mean, and it's not like, remember the way this thing works, it doesn't know who you are, right? Like the whole thing uses zero knowledge proof. So you just get a token that you can just prove that it's an unclaimed iris hash. It doesn't know who you are, right? They don't take your name and number and your date of birth when they scan you. In fact, you should actively avoid that. You should just fucking turn up, even turn up in a fucking burqa, right? Just like, get them to scan your eye. They give you the token. They give you like a little USB drive with it on or something, and then you just fuck off, and they have no idea who you are, right? That's the way it works.
So and how would that work for something like UBI? Because ultimately, I do believe that like the digital asset market will be the one to facilitate a like a sort of global CBDC, and I think USDC is the framework of
Well,
that.
the thing is, this isn't a CBDC though, right? I mean, it's decentralized because because nobody's in charge of this, right? The people with the iris scanner, they're just giving you this token, right? I mean, they can't revoke it. That's all they're doing is they're proving that you have a pair of eyes. That's literally all their job is. It's not like they're the government.
Naka, is there a way to get them on a space, man? This is like pretty
Sure.
trippy. Yeah, if
Yeah.
there's,
I know some of the guys. On my real life Twitter, I'm friends with some of the guys who are the founders. Max Novenstern. I think Sam Altman's also involved, but I'm not friends with him, but I'm friends with Max, so I could get him on.
Yeah. If you can try to bring him on here, man, that would probably be the most trippy thing ever. No, we have another speaker here. Spot Inuit.
Hey, everyone.
What's going on, man?
Just a really quick question. Why iris, not a fingerprint? I mean, it's the same question, the same. It's the same, like uniquely identifying, and it's less scary. So why iris specifically, and not fingerprint?
Well, I think so. I think there are some technical reasons for that. I think a fingerprint actually doesn't uniquely identify you amongst all human beings. And also, you leave your fingerprints all over the place. So somebody could, in theory, collect your fingerprints and then somehow, claim on your behalf. Whereas the iris requires a special kind of infrared sensitive camera that's sort of basically proprietary tech. So basically, if somebody just takes a picture of your face, they can't get this information. It's super high resolution. It's basically, it's really, really high resolution. It's in the infrared spectrum. So nobody's gonna, and you have to be really still in like a really dark room, really close to this thing. It needs to get really close to your face to have the required resolution. So because of all these factors, it's very difficult for somebody to sort of extract that information from you, right? Because what you don't want is if you base it on somebody's fingerprint, like you could leave a fingerprint somewhere, and then they could take that fingerprint and they could hash it with the same, hashing algorithms, and they could actually work out, what, well, they couldn't work out which one your wallet was because the whole thing's zero knowledge, but, they could, for example, claim it on your behalf before you did, right? So you basically, there are some technical reasons why the iris is the best thing for this. It's the best thing on a person's body that you can easily access, that really identifies them uniquely and is hard for a third party to basically sniff out.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of more out there uh projects in the digital asset space. Like last night I was in crypto Kaleo space, and someone was mentioning how they got into a donut NFT, but it was like a local business, right? And essentially you get this donut NFT, and then when you go to this donut shop you get like a t-shirt or a coffee mug, and you get like little discounts and deals here and there. So it's like, imagine coupons, right? The idea is coupons, right, will eventually be turned into NFTs. If you go to a supermarket, right, and you hold this NFT, then it qualifies you for like 5% off, 10% off, and the longer you hold the NFT, it's kind of like a reward system where it pays you out and say like Whole Foods points, right? You accumulate all these Whole Foods points, and that's considered your quote unquote yield. And then that qualifies you to like get into these deals like 10% off, 15% off. And throughout the year, you'll have like seasonalities where, when you prove ownership, right, of the NFT, like they scan your wallet or whatever, they're like, all right, like you're in charge of this wallet, you get like, buy one get one, little things like that. And this idea essentially started out from a local donut shop, and it's just donut NFTs, dude. It's just a donut with a smiley face and different sprinkles and all that stuff. So there's definitely some things out there, and like they're ultimately trying to do some like, IP stuff, right? So things like drinks, bubble gum, candy, things like that. Like, if you want to talk interesting developments, it's really the NFT space that's kind of going crazy. And you also have like generative art NFTs that work through storytelling. Like, I spoke a lot on Shibuya XYZ, and like they're teaming up with Azukis, and they have 250 of these Azukis, right? And essentially, what they're going to be doing is they're going to be doing like these sort of lore esque things where like you'll have chapters within the broader story, sort of like an anime, and the owner of those Uzukis will be paid out, right? As far as like, how much it's viewed, how much is contributed to them, and it all goes back to the creator, right? So I think things like that are going to do pretty well. Like as far as the digital asset space goes, I think a lot of like the new money, right, or the new retail is going to flock towards things that are how do I say it? They're more interactive, right? They get to see their art pieces or their PFPs in motion, right? And it does things like Shibuya has this feature where it kind of sees your history within the platform, and it caters to your feed, right? Your feed of content. And you essentially get to vote with the Shibuya token eventually when it comes out, as far as like the outcome of said story, right? So things like that are sort of starting out, and they start with a small idea. Those are going to be really cool. You would love it, Naka. Like, I know you don't really do like NFTs or anything like that, but this is not an NFT project. This is literally something that like had its seed round last week, um or a few weeks ago. I could be mistaken. Sometimes I lose track of time, but it was earlier this month. And like the chick, Emily Yang, she worked for Blizzard, right? As far as like doing animations, and she was a Hollywood visual artist. And she also did some animations for a lot of the DeFi protocols and NFT protocols. So it's not just just the PFP, right? Like if you look at a lot of the PFPs or anything in the NFT space, dude, it's like, why does everything have to be an animal with a different set of like earrings or hair color or things like that? Like there's no innovation. It's like as you said, there's a lot of cash grabs, there's a lot of pump and dumps, and there has to be something more. And I think that like what people call quote unquote, Web3, it's a meme right now. It's a meme, and it's kind of cringe to hear, but it doesn't matter if in 5-10 years time the majority of the digital asset space users are going to be using that term, right? And that's why I think maximalism ultimately fails in the end, because then you're in an echo chamber, right? You've got the BTC maxis saying, oh my gosh, smart contracts are a scam. Ethereum can just print out a ton of tokens. And in fact, that's not the case. Eventually something like Ethereum, right, given enough demand, it'll be like a deflationary asset, and it'll be self-producing as far as revenue is concerned. And there's many protocols that are profitable even despite the quote unquote downturn, right? You have Lido, you have Aave, you have LuxRare, you have Uniswap, you have multiple protocols that are profitable, right? And they have a higher TVL than their own market cap, and they produce enough volume where it overweighs their token emissions. So, with that being said, a lot of maxis really don't know what they're talking about, and it's coming to a point where like there are more quote unquote crypto users than there are Bitcoin users. And remember, I told you, Naka, there's actually more Bitcoin on AVAX than Lightning, and that's a problem. That is a massive, 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 massive problem. um, but hey, knock on wood, that's not really my field. I don't work for a miner, you know.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean the problem, Robbie, the problem with the Bitcoin crowd is basically a sociological one. So like, they basically had a social revolution in Bitcoin where they got rid of all the competent people and replaced them with people who were like very brave and loud and kind of ideological, and because they got rid of all the competent people, like Bitcoin can't develop anymore, right? So they can't fucking make anything that works. So all they can do is hold. And then, it gets into this kind of death spiral where Bitcoin is just like, all you do with it is hold. You just fucking hold your pet rock and you never do anything with it and you never use it. And then anyone who comes along and is a Bitcoin dev and is like, actually, I want to make something where people can use Bitcoin. They're like, no, 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 you can't do that. You can't do that. It's evil. And like,
that is
this
hilarious,
is
man.
this is kind of what's cucking Bitcoin, and this is why the flipping is eventually going to happen. But it's not
Yeah,
going to happen this bear market, right? I don't think
yeah.
bear
Yeah,
market.
and that's
Um,
why things like Taro are coming to pass. And even though I understand that it was simply just a proposal by Lightning Labs, like I don't want to like overshill it. I don't want to overshill it. This is just coming from an individual that like lived through the last bear market and was a true believer in DeFi when everyone just said Ethereum would go back to ICO price, right? You have to remember, like Tone Vays and a lot of other people were saying, "Oh, it's gonna go back to ICO price," because eventually, like all the tokens that came out during that time period, 2015 to 2018, all of those tokens retested their ICO price. ADA went back below 2 cents, right? ADA debuted at like 2.5 cents. ADA actually made an all time low twice, right? So like the fear with Ethereum was, oh, all these ICO treasuries, I mean, all these ICOs had ETH in their treasury, and everyone's like, oh, they're all gonna dump on spot market. But a lot of them, what they ended up doing is they ended up doing like OTC trades with exchanges for BTC, right? And that's kind of why like you had instances where BTC would dump a lot more than Ethereum, right? And they would be like, oh, why is Ethereum lagging behind Bitcoin? But of course, eventually, like it catches up. And I think it shouldn't be like that, man. It really shouldn't. But ultimately, I think dev power will overtake market share, and I think there's going to be more people in the digital asset space, right, as far as like crypto goes than Bitcoin. And like I understand everyone's entitled to their own opinion, right? There are even some people out there, Naka, that say that stable coins are going to overtake BTC and ETH, right? And they attribute things like Circle has a relationship to BlackRock and this, that, and the other, and BlackRock is gonna like inject a ton of money into USDC, and USDC is gonna be like number one and all that stuff. and then that's kind of interesting. Like, I think that's a more interesting conversation, right? If you look at, like, the market cap for all money, right? Like US dollar, yen, and all those things. Wouldn't it be interesting, Naka? Right? Hear me out on this. Wouldn't it be interesting if a stable coin ends up kind of being among the top ranks, right? What would you say to that? Since we're diving in deep here in the woods, in the trenches.
Yeah, I mean, the USDC, the problem with USDC is it's centralized, and that's a huge vulnerability, right? Crypto cannot live with USDC, right? USDC needs to go. The problem is nobody's managed to make a crypto stablecoin that actually works, right? That's decentralized, scalable, doesn't implode, like Luna did. This is tough, right? A lot of people are trying, and you mentioned earlier, like fucking Arve's trying it, Curve is trying, all the big dApps are trying to make their own stablecoins. And, I mean, good luck to them. I don't think it'll work. I think I have a solution, but I can't talk about it now.
Oh man, what's been the worst DeFi experience that you've personally encountered? I'll tell you. I'll tell you my own experience. Um, it was using Mover. It was using the Mover ecosystem. That was my worst experience ever. It was using Mover. It was using
Oh, you mean Moon River?
Yeah. It's essentially like an ETH clone, right? That's what it is. It's supposed to be, right. I understand it deals with Polkadot and all that stuff, but the experience, right, as far as gas fees and transactions and all that stuff, it was Moon River. But the thing is, in 2021, almost every single thing that came out on Moon River rugged. Moon Pad rugged, Moon Farm rugged, Solar rugged, and that was something wild, dude. Like, I pulled out all my funds, um, like the same week that they got rugged, right? And the reason why I used it was because I remember on my birthday, right? It was pretty much like near the El Salvador Day. I had along on Luna, on Polkadot, and on Phantom, and I sort of challenged myself to an undiscretionary amount in a short period of time, and I had achieved that beyond expectation. And I cut half of that position, and I just let the other one ride. And little to my knowledge, right? I had cross margin on, instead of like just regular margin, right? Like just with that position, and it was on KuCoin, right? So it wasn't like it was this like ridiculous amount, because there is a limit of like $100,000 if you're not like fully registered with them or whatever. But um, that ended up getting fucking liquidated, and a little mistake on my part. So I took half of that account that was remaining, and I degened it on Mover, and I got into Moon Farm and MooPad, and those things did a 3x within the day. So I made that money back, and then within the same quarter, um, they rugged the liquidity, and I was like, "Wow, dude." And the reason why I say like the experience was pretty bad was because it's very clunky. The UI was awful, extremely awful, and you had to slowly scale into position, right? Because as you know, when you go to these bridges, um, something as small as like 2 to 3 ETH would pump the price ridiculously. So it's like you had to do this sort of like pseudo twop, right? Like put in a couple $100, wait a bit, put a couple $100, wait a minute, and so you're there for like an hour just doing these small transactions and all that stuff. Um, but then all of a sudden you'll have like someone that just apes in with like 30, 40 ETH, and then there's a god candle. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, man. Um, and what are your thoughts on like non KYC exchanges, dude? Do you think those are still going to be out there in crypto, or do you think like
Yeah,
this is sort of going to be like the last cycle?
it's
That
called it's called Rune, man.
yeah,
There's your non KYC exchange, bro. It's called Rune and Uniswap, right?
yeah, yeah. Have you ever used like Dex perps, like something like a
Oh,
GMX
yeah.
or
Yeah,
DYDX?
I think I did use DYDX a little bit, but like a fucking idiot, I didn't use. No, did I use it or not? I can't remember. I think I may have tried to use it, but the fees were too big, so I didn't, and then I missed out on the DYDX airdrop like a fucking loser. Oh man, I looked at it. I was like, well, my position's going to be about 1 ETH. The fee's going to be like 0.1 ETH. Like, just to even open the position, I have to pay, and then even worse with the old school DYDX. Not only did you have to pay to open and close positions, and it was a significant amount of ETH because it's quite an expensive smart contract in terms of gas use. It's also like if you panic and think the price is going against you because there's like a cascade or something, at that moment the gas price is going to be really high, so you're probably going to actually get trapped whenever you really want to get out, you're going to be trapped, right? So you basically, if you're long, you better not be a small account. If you're a small account long on DYDX, holy shit. But I think that's kind of improved. GMX is on Arbitrum, right? So that's going to do better. But yeah, I mean, I don't think I've actually used them because it's not, nowadays I don't trade any kind of instrument that can be liquidated, right? I only trade spot or leverage tokens. I don't trade anything that even has any liquidation risk because I just don't want to take that risk. I've been scammed too many times. And you can't really get those on DeFi, right? They're not really a thing yet, but they will come.
And how do you think DeFi on BTC is gonna work, man? Because Taro is kind of like
It's not going to work. I don't think DeFi on BTC is going to happen.
yeah. Because imagine Naka like an NFT project, right? And for people in the audience or for our listeners on YouTube or what have you, I recognize that like some people do cringe on NFTs, but what people have to realize is that your biases do not dictate where the money in this market goes. You know what I'm saying? The market's just going to do its own thing and the market's going to survive. It's sort of like Darwinism, like survival of the fittest. Let nature decide, right? So with that being said, there is a market appeal for NFTs, even during this quiet period, right? You have Sappy Seals, you have Pudgy Penguins, you have Miladies, you have projects like that are up like 200, 300% against Ethereum, right? And Ethereum is up like what, 60% off of the November lows. So there's something to be said about that, right? I understand that the market caps are currently small, but my thesis, um, due to some like due to some individuals that I've been talking to off of Twitter, there's a lot of capital in the background that's been raising for that sector of the digital asset space. that tells me that the upcoming bull cycle is going to have the NFT marketplace reach an evaluation similar to what the alts eventually did in 2017, right? What was it, Naka? If you can go, if you have a chart in front of you, if you can go back to total two, right? Everything excluding BTC, I think it was like near like 400 billion, something like that, as far as alt evaluations go. So I think something along those lines are going to be achieved. And whether people think I'm crazy or not, that's just that's just like something
So,
that,
the total 3 market cap, that's everything excluding BTC and ETH and excluding the stable coins. So total 3 minus USDC minus USDT.
in January of 2018. In January of 2018, if you can go back there.
Okay, well, so I have what it was in November 21. It was 1 trillion. That hit exactly 1 trillion on the nose in November 2021. Now, what was this shit in
January 2018? That's what.
I have to just change my query because one of the stable coins didn't exist then, which is probably. Which stablecoin didn't exist? BUSD probably didn't exist, right?
Yeah, I don't think USDC even existed back then either. And if it did, dude, like it was like something extremely minuscule. I didn't hear about USDC until like.
USDC is like a late 2018, early 2019 thing.
Yeah,
right,
I was gonna say, dude, like I didn't really hear anything about USDC until like late Q3 of 2018 when that backed ETF thing came out, or the backed exchange. And that was a failed experiment. That was the weirdest thing ever, dude.
Yeah, so let me just alter this. So okay. I'll go to logarithmic. So man, I hate the way TradingView makes everything auto all the time. Oh shit, it still doesn't work. Why doesn't it go back that far? I can only go back to June 2018 on this.
No. Go on Bitfinex. You should be able to see that on Bitfinex.
How far does total 3 even go back?
Or you can just use total 2, or something like go to the January 20. Yeah.
All right. So total 3 was 349 billion. 360 billion at the top.
Yeah,
sorry.
so I wasn't that far off. I had said
360 billion at the top. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think,
which interestingly enough, we're about 350 billion right now. So we're actually right the 2018 top, which is quite.
So I kind of think that as far as like growth and innovation is concerned, right, or quote unquote risk on, I really don't like that word, to be honest. I think it's kind of a plebeian term, and it's kind of a headache to use like all those words that everyone else is using. But I'm in the camp of history may not repeat itself, but it often rhymes, So I think the next wave of growth and innovation is going to come from the whole Web3 and all that stuff. And there are some of these projects that I did mention, like Shibuya, that it will eventually have some hardware components into it, but it's not going to be virtual reality. It's going to be augmented reality. So, if you have things like Microsoft, right, open partnerships with something like OpenAI, and they're like open to the metaverse and all those things, there's something to be said about that when you have like industry tech titans back that up. So I'm excited for the next few years. I don't really pay attention to sort of like the outside noise, right? Like if people go crazy over payment solutions, they have a right to do so. If people are excited over things in Web3, right, with like the whole metaverse and all that stuff, they're entitled to that. If people are excited for things like DeFi, right, then by all means have fun, right? You're free to do as you see fit, right? Use it at your own leisure, and take any security precautions that you deem necessary. But I'm excited, man. I'm personally excited. What developments have you seen, Naka? Are there any like protocols that you've been looking at recently outside of WorldCoin? And this doesn't have to be exclusive to like ETH or anything. It could be anything. It could be like alternative payment solutions. Like what's an exciting development in the digital asset space that you've been looking at more recently?
Well, honestly, man, I mean, Rune and Aztec are both pretty interesting. Aztec, especially. There's also Starkware. Um, that's pretty exciting. I've been doing a little bit of work with the new Quiver exchange, so I might be shilling them a little bit more soon. So Quiver is basically an exchange that has a novel auction system for bringing buyers and sellers together, and it basically eliminates the advantage from being fast, right? So it's basically a new way of facilitating trading that means that speed isn't really an advantage. You can't do better using Quiver's auction by being like, 50 nanoseconds quicker. And that's pretty important because high frequency trading actually, costs a lot of money, right? It extracts a lot of value from the space, and it actually does collateral damage as well. So, and that applies to crypto as well as legacy markets. Although more to legacy because HFT is much of a bigger thing in legacy. But still, being able to eliminate the parasitic high frequency traders is like a huge deal. It means that Quiver's books can be much more liquid. Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
I mean, and speaking of like developments and all that stuff in the tech space, I haven't really seen much of the Noster folks anymore, and
Well,
it's kind of.
we got one of them right here. We got Mr. Jimmy. He's right here. If you want someone to shill Moss to get him as a
Oh,
speaker,
I'm okay, man. I'm good on Noster, dude. I remember you had those spaces going on, and
yeah. I mean, the thing that I don't like about Noster is the fact that it isn't a blockchain project, right? So, because it isn't blockchain, it's going to have some problems in the long term. And because the Bitcoin people are the ones doing it, and they don't really have roll-ups that work yet, they kind of can't put it on a blockchain because they can't put it on Bitcoin. Obviously, they don't really have any, L2s that really work. Now they do use Lightning with it, but Lightning isn't Turing complete, so that's a bit of a problem. But I mean, it's something to keep an eye on, certainly.
It's a bit of a problem when you have more Bitcoin on AVAX than Lightning. That's a problem. You want to talk about problems?
Yeah, but I mean, this is like,
That's a problem,
I mean,
dude.
there's, it is to some extent, but there's a sort of deeper problem here, which is that Bitcoin doesn't have a decentralized L2 that's Turing complete, right? So you can't write smart contracts on Lightning, and that's a huge problem. That's a huge problem.
No problem, dude. Don't worry. Jack Dorsey is going to recruit a lot of VCs and make his Bitcoin DEX, and I'm not sure why there's like a lot of dislike.
Well, how are they going to make a Bitcoin DEX?
I don't know how that's going to work, but that's what
how are
Dorsey
you going to make a DEX?
Yeah,
if you don't have smart contracts.
Naka, I want you to do me a favor. I just want to say I'm not shilling this token, but anytime DeFi is mentioned for Bitcoin, the only examples that we have is Xenon Network, and to buy the token, it's a bitch, to be honest. It's pretty complicated, and then to put it into your wallet and all that stuff, it's like learning a whole new ecosystem all over again, right? But that's the best example that we have.
Is that Xenon with a Z?
Xenon, like Zenon, and then it's network.
Okay.
Yeah, and like the devs are pretty like they're not necessarily docs, but there are some like community members and all that stuff. I'll try to bring them on, dude, but I wouldn't really recommend anyone to.
What's the ticker for this? XNN.
Let me. I think it's ZEN, man. There's a. Let me check on CoinGecko. Hold on.
ZEN.
Yeah, ZN. It's ZNN, dude. ZNN.
ZNN. Okay.
Yeah, no, ZNN, and like they call themselves.
ZNN.
Yeah, no, like Z, like the last letter in the alphabet, and then NN.
That's called Z. Okay, that's not called Z. Like.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That's you're from the English land.
Don't say that to Scottish or Welsh people. I'll be really fucking offended. I'm from Britain.
Oh gosh. But yeah, they call themselves the Xenon aliens.
Also known as Great Britain, because it's great.
So you know how like there's like the Link Marines, right? Well, the community for Xenon, they call themselves the aliens, the ZNN aliens. And if you want an idea of how like DeFi on Bitcoin would work,
Xenon isn't on Bitcoin, right? It's its own, right?
Yeah. But if you deep dive, dude, I'll do a space on it eventually, dude. But I would need at least like one or two community members, right? Or maybe someone from the team if they want to come out or whatever. But if you do some research on it, Naka, you'll see that like there is some speculation that Jack Dorsey is involved, and he's sort of using the Xenon framework for building DeFi on Bitcoin, right? But the thing is that that's always going to involve some sort of like outside money. The entire industry for tech always involves some outside money, right? Like if you see miners, right? A lot of the big name miners, right? They're all publicly traded companies and they all have private money, right? So I'm not sure where this like hate from the fiat world comes from, or rather not from the fiat world, but to the fiat world. Like I'm a fan. I'm a fan of it all, bro. I'm a fan of it all. Like if it helps out the industry, I'm all for it, brother.
Right.
Like, dude. Even you got to remember also, dude. J.P. Morgan has put in a ton of money on Ethereum. They have a seat on the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, right? They've helped incubate a lot of these projects. So when Jamie Dimon says, "Oh, I think like digital assets," no, he says, "I think crypto is a scam, and I think Bitcoin is a scam." Right. But when the term comes up, digital assets, he's bullish on it because he puts his own money into it, right? So it's like, so it's kind of a psyop, right? And dude, you had Jim Cramer like actually cry for a whole week, talking about how he regrets talking about Facebook and BTC, and he mentioned Solana. He mentioned Solana 3 times during that segment where he cried. So I guess the alpha from this entire almost 2 hour long episode is if you see Jim Cramer crying about something, it's probably a screaming buy. But Naka, I wanted to throw this in your direction before we wrap up. I don't trade the equity markets, but an idea that I was throwing around sometime in Q4, right? Don't you think it would be kind of smart to like, start accumulating some coin stock or maybe doing some longer dated call options, right? On coin stock?
Yeah, I mean, I have a guy I've been helping, and I told him to do the exact same thing. He's got some coin calls.
But I was thinking, Naka, right? Like you buy them like at the beginning of Q4, mid Q4, and they have an expiry of Q3 of 2024. So you're playing the halving, right? You're playing the halving and you're having exposure for like 8 months out, right? So it's not like they're gonna expire worthless if we're gonna play like the halving, right? So it's just an idea that like I think might be interesting, right? But knock on wood, kind of speculation on my part, but it's an idea that I've been throwing around.
If you want a safe buy to profit from the next crypto bull run, coin is great, right? It's great because it's a regulated US company. You know, it's definitely going to do well if crypto does well, right? And it's definitely not a scam. It's been around for a long time. It got dumped a lot. Jim Cramer was bearish. I think coin is a good play. But you have. In fact, I would even say if you want two cryptos to buy some ETH and buy some BTC. If you want to add a third one, buy some coin, right? Even though coin isn't a crypto,
I mean, it has the evaluation of a crypto. It's like 10 billion.
Right? It has so much correlation to the sector that it's a great way to play the whole sector without having to take risks, right? And then if you wanted to add a fifth, if you want to add a fourth one on top of that, I would say DeFi Pulse Index is pretty interesting, right?
Yeah.
That'll get you Aave, Link, Uni. It'll get you exposure to all of the good old fashioned Ethereum scams. And some of those are ready to pump, right? I think even Curve is in it, and it's an index. So again, you don't have to be super good at picking the winner, right? So yeah, DeFi Pulse Index, Curve, DeFi Pulse Index, Coin, ETH, BTC.
So I'm getting some DMs about Xenon Network. I just put it up on the Nest.
Yeah.
So feel free to check that out, guys. I'll try to do some due diligence as far as like reaching out to them, but like I'm currently in the process of like doing a few partnerships with like some of the devs from Ethereum mainnet, like people from Balancer and also Polygon and Gala and Aave. I'm currently in some talks with them to start bringing in more of that dev power more regularly here on the spaces. I'm currently like in the process of trying to secure something with Cosmos and having their guys come on at least once a week. So like my plan for Crypto World Radio is to have like actual scheduled programming, right? So like our schedule's Monday through Friday, right? So Monday will be like the Cosmos day, Tuesday will be like the ETH mainnet day, Wednesday will be like the L2 day, and then Thursday will probably be like a community space, and then Friday will be like someone from Web3 or the NFT type of arena. So that's kind of like my goal. So if anyone here has like any connections to any devs that are building on Ethereum or Ethereum L2, feel free to contact me, or at the Because Bitcoin Twitter page. If you're new to the spaces, feel free to follow us here. We have regularly scheduled content Monday through Friday. We have myself, Crypto World Radio. It's usually at 7 p.m. Eastern time, but whenever there's like some time zone differences, it might be a lot earlier or a lot later. But today our guest unfortunately did not get back to me, although he did confirm with me last night that he would arrive. I think something popped up or he wasn't able to make it, so I'm sorry for that, guys.
I think I know what happened actually.
Oh, what happened?
He was leveraged long with his whole net worth and life savings on like 50x, and he just got liquidated on the down move.
No, I don't
it is
think
what it is. It happens. Just try to be careful out there, guys.
So yeah, that's kind of like what I want to like what I'm working towards, so look forward to like the next couple of months. Next month we announce some pretty cool stuff for the brand and also Crypto World Radio to kind of have some scheduled programming and bring more of like the cryptos and not really crypto but more of the DeFi and Web3 crowd into these spaces. So these spaces will be looking a lot larger than they are at the current.
We're fucking dumping, bro. It's like SPX is at 39.60.
Yeah, I think this move in crypto was kind of like overheated. I was saying that over the weekend and on Friday, but it's kind of odd because you exit a trade and then it pumps like 70%. Like I exited APT just under $10, thinking I was a genius, and then like, a few days later it's up 70%. But
Yeah.
yeah, it is what it
Yeah.
is. Better to be safe than sorry, right?
Yeah. I mean, people say you should sell into strength, but I actually disagree. You generally want to be selling into the complacency shoulder when you get it. Rather, because if you sell into strength, that might be like another fucking 50x you miss, right? But if you sell into the complacency shoulder, I mean, those things are usually at like a 50% or 61.8% retrace or something. So, you basically got the entire move except the last, 30 or 40 or something percent of it, which is fine, right? For crypto. But yeah, I mean, it's not looking good for the bulls. I'm gonna say, like, gap down on the S&P, gap down on QQQ. Painful. But yeah, let's see. It's not over yet. We're still in a locally
Yeah.
bullish structure on the daily, so let's see how it goes.
Yeah. As far as BTC is concerned, it pulled off almost the exact same move that it did from June to August of last year. It puts in like a 50% move.
Yeah.
So that's something to take note of, and like we kept getting rejected. So I already know how this plays out.
Honestly, I might sell like half my BTC into ETH here.
Yeah.
Or at least a quarter of it or something, just to up my ETH position.
Yeah, I understand, man. But yeah, link to our Discord up above, and if you check the first slide of the nest, I've got the link to the project that I was being asked upon, and I got a DM just now asking what I think about Astar Network, and I believe that was an L1 building on Polkadot. They capture a lot of the Japanese market, which kind of falls into my thesis for the next cycle as far as like the Web3 component side of things. And I do think
Isn't Astar what you get if you eat like a really rotten curry? Like when it
nah, no. So it's basically
something different.
it's basically like it's an Etho one, right? It has a parachain and all that stuff on Polkadot, and it's one of the more like cheaper ones, right? That are both on top of it, so it doesn't really have this like gigantic this gigantic FDV, right? Like a lot of the dot projects and all that stuff is known for. And like it's again, it captures a lot of like the Asian market, specifically the Japanese market. And I think ultimately I think there's a place here in America for DeFi and all that stuff. And I think it's kind of like it's close to reaching mass consensus, right? Like if you go to any major city and you ask about like, ish coins, right? Or DeFi, people know. Like Gen Z and millennials, I would say 2/3 of them already know, right? I would say 2/3. Like 1/3 to 2/3 around there. But as far as like, the developments in Web3, people only know NFTs, and there's a lot more in the background. And I think with sectors that haven't been hit with DeFi and all that stuff, their exposure to the digital asset space is going to be things like GameFi, NFTs, and all that stuff, or interactive storytelling, right? Like storytelling NFTs, right? Those are going to be like the sectors where the Asian markets flood into, right? Because really the only thing that the Asian markets have had experience in the digital asset realm has been the 2017 cycle, right? Where it was a lot of like spot driven activity through things like Huobi, OKX, all that stuff. And you had things like Neo run up like crazy, right? The Neo was actually huge in China. Like people knew who Dong Hongfei was and all that stuff. So inevitably, I think that craze will come, and it fits into my thesis of the next cycle is going to be pushed via spot and not so much derivatives. And I'm going to stick to my guns and say that the Web3 space is going to completely outperform anything in DeFi. And my last thesis during the last bear market was that DeFi would completely outperform Bitcoin, and it did, and it's time stamped on both a podcast I did back in the day and also some posts on my IRL accounts. And my stance is unwavering, and I'm willing to see that through, regardless of any moral high compass that any maxi from any chain or even BTC wants to debate with me. I'm not about that. I flow to where social capital isn't prevalent yet, but there's a lot of developments in the background as far as dev power and also capital, and that's what makes a market, right? So with that being said, Naka, thank you so much for coming on and saving the space, bro. Like,
Appreciate it.
yeah. I just want to say thanks, dude. Today's discussion was pretty good. I really think last night's discussion was like pretty based. That was like one of the most enjoyable spaces that I have done in a very long time. It felt good to kind of like sort of talk about multiple like ecosystems, right? I think we need more of that instead of just talking about narratives in crypto, right? Or price action. Like, we've reached the point now where it's like, all right, you kind of have to start picking your fighters, right? Start picking your Matics, your Phantoms, your Lunas, your Runes of the next cycle, right? Um, and one of the Aztec guys actually lives here in Miami, so I'm trying to coordinate like meeting up with him and all that stuff after a Zoom call. I'm gonna try to get them on here, so can't wait for that. Knock, if you can talk to the WorldCoin guys, we'll probably try to do a space with them in the next week or two.
Yeah,
That'd be pretty cool.
What kind of how big do you think the audience would be if because obviously they're busy guys. How big do you think the audience would be?
It would have to, like, from what I noticed, the bigger crowds for Crypto World Radio, it's usually at like 2 p.m. Eastern time, or 6 p.m. Eastern time, right around there. It's those two times, or it's 8 p.m. Eastern time, around that time, or like 7:30.
How many people do you think will turn up if he comes along? Because if it's like
Yeah,
three,
so well over 100.
over 100. Okay,
Yeah, well over 100.
I'll send him a DM right now.
Yeah. Like from the average from the average amount of, like, listeners across like Crypto World Radio, there can be anywhere from today we had like 85 people, close to 90 at our at like the peak. So yesterday we had close to 100, and typically when it's like community discussions, usually around that as well.
It's on Twitter and on YouTube, right?
Yeah. Like it's live streamed on YouTube as well. So
okay, all right. I sent Max the message. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you, man. Thanks, brother. All right, guys. Thanks for coming into an episode Crypto World Radio. Upload for the space will be on our YouTube channel in about 5-10 minutes, or I think a bit later than that. I know our producer is handling some things right now. So I'll see you guys tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern time. We're gonna have a friend of the show, Trader Mercury, come on. Receive some pretty good feedback on that one. So Mercury's gonna be on tomorrow. So I want to thank you guys for pulling up. Thank you guys so much. And just a reminder, we have Market Check that's starting in 30 minutes here on Twitter Spaces with our CEO Max and our analyst Premise and Snorlax. So look forward to that, guys. I'm gonna go train after I eat. So thanks, Naka, for coming on. Feel free to join our Discord, guys, and take care. And I'll see you on the next one. If you want a replay of the space, check on our YouTube. And feel free to give any feedback in the comment section on our YouTube, and turn on bell notifications in case you're not able to make it across any of our Twitter spaces, if you have work or something, we usually have a market check at 11 a.m. Eastern time, market talk at 4:15 Eastern time, 4:15 p.m. Eastern time, and then myself, Crypto World Radio at 7 p.m. Eastern time. But anytime I tell you guys um, to turn on bell notifications when you follow the Because Bitcoin Twitter profile, it's for this exact reason. Sometimes some things do come up, and um, we do have to be sort of flexible with the time that we hold these spaces, but we try to be as consistent as possible here. So I want to thank you guys for your patience. Thank you all so much for supporting us here Because Bitcoin. Have a nice day. Enjoy the rest of our content, and God bless you.
Appreciate it, Wabi.
No problem, brother.
The trading current is just math. It's just math. It has a 95.45% hit rate when we deviate outside of CP2 and CN2. All you had to do is recognize that 95% of the time when we get over here, under this blue line, we get some sort of mean reversion. So let's just assume you long right here. 95 out of 100 times, when I buy this, I'm going to get some sort of bounce. It's just math. Look what would have happened as we move up. Look at the bounce that came after. And now look where we are. If you had just blindly followed the current, you take all emotions out of it, you say, I'm going to trust the statisticians. You would have bought Dow Jones somewhere down here under 30,000, depending on how you want to measure it from absolute top to bottom, 20% move. We also have multi-time frame alerts. You don't even have to be at your computer on TradingView. You can ping your phone. Now, the current has some really awesome features, and I would urge you guys to join our Discord to get access to it. We give it away for free as a tool to the community. It's just math. There's really no need to overcomplicate things, not even in the slightest.